Next up, we have Emily Ferguson from Southern Ontario. She became engaged thanks to operators' proposal to reverse the flow of a nearby pipeline to her and her difficulty in finding information about that, which led her to embark on a very impressive mapping project on her own and starting a blog to inform her community about what was going on because she could not find the information she was looking for. So she'll talk about this process and her work with public engagement efforts on a number of fronts. Thank you.
Thank you. Maps. Everyone loves maps. They show us where we are in the world. They tell us how to get from A to B. And they inform us that the small community that we grew up in for 20 years has an oil pipeline running straight through it. I've always been interested in energy issues, from Keystone XL to Enbridge Northern Gateway, and the global implications of our reliance on fossil fuels. About 2 years ago, the issue hit much closer to home. What very few people knew, including me, was that Enbridge had a 40-year-old oil pipeline which ran along the north shore of Lake Ontario and through the most populated urban region in Canada, in Toronto. This story is about Line 9. I was interested to learn more about Line 9 and started attending public meetings. At one particular meeting, I was denied access to an information package with local details on the project. I wasn't the only one. At another meeting, a member of the audience was denied a copy of a PowerPoint that had just been presented to us. I wondered why the company was withholding information. I wondered why they wouldn't provide me with a detailed map of where the pipeline was. Later that week, the information was quite easily accessible after sending a request to a friend on City Council. I soon discovered that Line 9 crossed straight through the small community I grew up in called Glen Burnie. I created a blog called Line 9 Glen Burnie to help inform residents, but my curiosity soon turned to obsession. Line 9 Glen Burnie rapidly turned into Line 9 communities as I created maps of the pipeline all along the route. From a single point where the pipeline crossed in my community, I used online mapping tools and satellite images to track the full 840 kilometers of the pipeline for all communities. Once Line 9 was mapped, I took screenshots of every 5-mile segment and then posted them on Line 9 communities. That's when the public outreach began. It all started with 400 flyers I personally dropped off to residents in Glen Burnie. 99% of residents were unaware that the Enbridge oil pipeline shared the right-of-way with the TransCanada natural gas pipeline that served their homes. I created an email address and began to connect with communities. The website soon grew to include integrity digs, analysis of technical documents, and mapping of other pipelines due to endless email requests for information. I contacted many city councillors along the line and sat down over coffee with many to discuss the proposal. The lack of information provided to municipalities shocked me. I proceeded to canvass neighbourhoods along the line to poll residents and to provide details about open houses and how to get involved. Most were unaware of the open houses because they were often held in remote locations and poorly advertised. I continued my advocacy through presentations to universities and interviews with radio programs and print media. So many people were unaware and the clock was ticking. Enbridge had applied to the Canadian National Energy Board to reverse the flow, to increase the capacity, and to ship diluted bitumen from the oil sands. I felt compelled to learn everything I could about the project and to share the information with those most directly affected. If Enbridge wasn't going to make the public aware, I would. The bottom line is, my website shouldn't have been necessary, but I continue to get questions from citizens who can't seem to get the answers from the pipeline companies. The success of Line 9 communities comes as a direct result of industry's practices. Just take a look at the numbers posted here. The website is nearing 50,000 views. Of that, over 27,000 are from people looking for maps. And then there's the world map. Every country that is colored has been to the website. 75 countries. Take a moment to think about that. Thanks to the power of the internet, what started as an interest to inform my community has expanded to all communities along the line and expanded globally. Through building the website, I learned a lot about the project and decided to apply for intervener status with the National Energy Board. What I learned from that experience is that even in the formal regulatory process, it is still difficult to get answers from the pipeline companies. In addition, the regulator is bound by limitations that make it very difficult to keep pipeline companies transparent and accountable. In the Canadian regulatory process, interveners can file information requests to the proponent. Unfortunately, many answers to our questions came back with the standard answer, quote, "You are on a fishing expedition." It quickly became apparent that more research would be needed while fulfilling both my intervener role and maintaining Line 9 communities. Other interveners and city councillors began coming to me with questions when they couldn't get the answers from Enbridge. Some councillors even told me that they had no knowledge of the project until they came across the website. What's more, people who live in some of the highest consequence areas are also unaware of the presence of Line 9 and therefore tend to be almost entirely uninformed about the potential risks. Through polling communities, along with other interveners, we quickly realized that even many first responders were unaware of the pipeline risks, and some weren't even aware the pipeline existed. This includes many high-consequence areas within their jurisdictions, such as public schools and senior centres. This is a picture here of Line 9 running parallel to stairs that go down into the Toronto transit system at one of the busiest subway stations on the network. The onus should be on pipeline companies to ensure that anyone who is exposed to the risks is properly informed. What would happen if there was a rupture near this subway station? How would people evacuate? Would they know what to do? Are there emergency management procedures in place? A good friend of mine and fellow NEB intervener, Rick Monroe, continues to work tirelessly to raise awareness about the risks at these high-consequence areas. But here's the point. It shouldn't be up to citizens to contact first responders and to ensure they are aware of these projects. Pipeline companies may have public awareness policies, but they are failing the public. The onus should also be on regulators to ensure that companies are complying with codes and regulations, public awareness programs, and appropriate signage. We also need pipeline companies to work together with all levels of government to enact greater safety setback requirements. Municipal planning departments could enact their own setback requirements to ensure that, unlike Toronto, we don't have schools, geriatric facilities, high-rise condos, and subway terminals within a few feet of high-pressure oil pipelines. In Canada and much of the US, we spend many months with snow-covered roads, which leads to challenges in emergency response. Just last week, I spent time in a remote Northern Ontario community facing the proposed TransCanada Energy East project. During my trip, we saw over 12 inches of snow, and the only highway in the area was closed. How does emergency response function when there's no route to get to the problem? I'd like to share with you 3 quotes that I've received to the Line 9 Communities website. First, a small flyer in my mailbox yesterday was the first I had heard of Enbridge's proposed changes to the pipeline located a mile up the road from me. I am amazed that something like this could move so quickly and quietly through the various stages of proposal, acceptance, and implementation. Another quote, "Thank you for keeping us informed. We live less than a kilometre from Line 9 and have already, several years ago, been evacuated due to a leak in the gas line, which fortunately did not burn or explode. The oil pipeline is old and not designed for the pressures needed for what is planned now." And finally, the third quote, "Thank you so much for your maps. I am looking for property, and this has helped me determine which homes to avoid, including one that met all of my wants and was priced where I wanted it, but the pipeline ran right through the property and about 150 feet from the house." I'd like everybody to take a closer look at this picture. Do you see the sign in the trees? This is the only sign on either side of the road to inform residents that there is a high-pressure oil pipeline there. Just over a year ago, I was recruited by an environmental consulting firm due to the work that I had done with Line 9. I'm now an energy and regulatory specialist working on various pipelines in Canada, including the entire Enbridge network from Manitoba to Quebec, the proposed TransCanada Energy East project, and the rush of gas pipeline infrastructure to accommodate the booming Marcellus and Utica shale development. I also continue to update, fact-check, and build on the Line 9 Communities website. Despite all the information I post, maps continue to receive the most attention. Even though the National Energy Board made a decision to approve Line 9 with conditions in March of 2014, people still don't know where it is, and I continue to receive requests for information. One of the most disheartening comments I received was from a landowner asking how they could get involved in the process after the decision had been made. These days, the website has taken on a life of its own. Without any promotion or new posts, there are typically 100+ views per day. I'm now getting requests to provide similar overviews for other projects. In an ideal world, the future, what does the public expect of pipeline companies? 1, live up to what you say you do. Public awareness programs are essential for safe pipelines, but they're useless stacks of paper unless put into action. If pipeline companies lived up to what they said they did, there would be a lot less mistrust. It's time for real community engagement, understanding each community's unique needs and priorities, one-on-one, boots on the ground, signage, information, connect with communities, listen to them, care about the impact, not just checking off a box. Conduct well-promoted open houses in public spaces with honest and transparent sharing of the potential risks and mitigation strategies. 3, maps. If the public is unaware of the location of a pipeline, they are less likely to actively participate in the regulatory process, and there is a much higher risk of unintentional third-party damage. To be honest, I have little hope that my words or anyone else's will have any impact on the need and greed of the oil and gas industry. But that does not dissuade me from speaking out about what matters. For now, pipelines are part of our world, but they need to come with safety precautions, public awareness, and regulations. Be honest, do the right thing. Pay attention to Aboriginal interests. Aboriginal communities are the original inhabitants of this land. They command our respect and are once again becoming stewards of the land. Grassroots movements are gaining strength. If the relationship between pipeline companies and the public doesn't change, communities will band together, municipalities will stand together, Aboriginal groups will say enough is enough, and advocacy will only get stronger. The toughest opposition to Keystone XL is coming from average people working together: ranchers, farmers, environmental advocates, and tribal communities. Take, for example, the Cowboy and Indian Alliance that marched in Washington, D.C., or the 400,000 people who marched in New York City to demand action on climate change, a moratorium on fracking, and the end to new oil pipelines being built. There is a massive paradigm shift happening before our eyes. Now is the time for deep reflection. In conclusion, the culture of deviance and dishonesty in this industry needs to stop. The world is watching. It's time for clear communication and information sharing. Be upfront with the answers. Be transparent about the risks. Pipeline safety matters, and at the end of the day, your bottom line depends on it. Thank you.